Hey guys, I just wanted to do part two of the personal testimony that I started. When was it? I think it was like a week ago or like 2 weeks ago, um, something like that. So, anyways, um, back to what I was saying. I can't remember quite when I left off, but anyways, I mean, that's the whole part of a story. It's that I'm not really trying to make it into a formal presentation where I start off with one topic and proceed logically to another. That's just not how my brain works. Um, it doesn't mean like I don't operate in structure. I definitely do. It's just that when it comes to this personal story, I don't want it to be like so rigid as to force you to follow every single detail in order to understand the whole thing. And so I don't want you guys to do that. Um, this is weird. It always happens whenever I try to record something. It just messages pop up on my phone. And so, anyways, I just turned off my phone, um, or just turned it to vibrate. Anyways, getting back on track. So, yes, I spent most of well, all of the 90s actually, because I was born in the late 80s, but 1988, July 7th. But I spent, all of the 90s in the Middle East. And so, um, you know, that's where I went to elementary school, and part of, I guess you can consider it middle school, but the school already had first to sixth grade, and so technically, um, I came here and I went to middle school, and so I want to kind of like really quickly talk about that because I remember when I first came here, and I came here actually at such a precarious time. I think if you're part of the millennial generation, which I guess there's like so many confusing statistics about that, because everybody has a different opinion, but usually what I have found to be considered the millennial generation would be 1980 to like about 1994, but sometimes they extend it to like 96. But generally it's like, I guess you can say 1980 to 1996. Although I do find it kind of interesting how, me personally, I don't know how much in common I would have with someone who's 24 years old, born in 1996. But anyways, I don't make those statistics. Somebody else does. I just follow them. And so, anyways, I came here. Fast forward to the whole Middle East thing. After I immigrated from Jordan. Even though I'm originally from Iraq, I'm not actually from Jordan. So, in case you guys missed that, I'm not from Jordan. I'm from Iraq. I was born in Baghdad, and I went to Jordan in 1994 because we were, you know, trying to find better opportunities, and a lot of Iraqi people, especially Assyrian and Chaldean people, which is what my family's ethnicity is. A lot of times they would go to those countries, or to that country in particular, to Jordan. Some of them also went to Lebanon, but we didn't want to go that far, so we just went to Jordan and we stayed there, and we were living in Amman for the entire time that we were in Jordan. So, but we finally got accepted into to coming to the United States. At first, in '97, actually, we were accepted to go to Canada, but my father and my mother reasoned that there's nobody that we really know in Canada. I mean, I do actually have some family in Canada, but it's very, very sparse. The majority of my family actually lives here in the United States, specifically in California, Michigan, and in Chicago. So Chicago, there's a lot of Assyrians over there. Chicago and the Bay Area. So like here in California in the Bay Area, and there's a lot of Chaldeans in San Diego County and in Michigan. So anyways, I just want to give you guys some perspective, I guess. So, but basically, we came here once we were accepted in 2001. We actually immigrated here around like 1 week after 9/11 happened, and it was crazy. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. It was really crazy. Just because I remember when I was in the Middle East and I saw, those airplanes just clash into the Twin Towers, and as a young boy, I was, you know, I really was shocked. I was 13 years old, and I remember watching it on TV. It just not like not when it happened at that exact time, but they were playing videotapes because there wasn't I think maybe Gen Z, maybe to a certain extent, the younger millennials, they don't really remember this. Not only just 9/11, but there was no smartphones. There was nothing like this. And this is like a basic smartphone too. This is not even like the most advanced like iPhone or whatever. It's kind of like a cheap Android. So, but it's not like people were just going live on Instagram and recording what was going on, and it wasn't like that. They had these camcorders, right? Like where, and there were people, like two or three people, I believe, who caught that on tape, and they were mostly on the ground. But then, once things kind of started getting a little bit crazier, there were several people from like adjacent buildings, and they were starting to record too. And I don't want to go into too much detail about that because it really was a horrifying event, especially for Americans. And so that was not something that anybody expected. Like, literally, nobody saw that coming. Um, and it really, I guess you can say, defined my generation because a lot of millennials afterwards enlisted into the military and they served in Iraq and Afghanistan. And, a lot of them also were involved in shady stuff when they were in Iraq, such as the Abu Ghraib prison tortures, where they were like doing all these weird racist, I do have to admit it was racist what they were doing. Those soldiers, those service members, because they were not just army, they were Marines, they were Navy, Air Force, all these other branches. And for me, I actually support the U.S. military, so I'm not like one of those anti-military, like, the military is, a terrorist organ. No, no, the military is not a terrorist organization. That's not even what a terrorist organization looks like. So for those people who like to just demonize anybody that they disagree with, I think they should read a book. With all due respect. But of course we can agree on policy, like, most of service members just get told what to do. It's not really, they're not the ones who are choosing to go to war. It's just whatever the higher echelon officers, the ones in the highest command, especially at the federal government, they're the ones who give the orders, and you just have to follow, and that's just how it is. And so, but anyways, that was very, like, it was inappropriate behavior, and I'm glad that they were sentenced to prison. I think they should have been there longer, though. Those, those, those service members. So right now they're probably in their mid to late 30s. These people, and the things that they did on the Iraqi prisoners was just abhorrent. And that was something that was also shocking to me to see as a person. But I want to kind of take it back to 2001 when I first came here, and I just I landed in New York, and lo and behold, can you guys guess where I landed? Near the Twin Towers. I was looking to my right. I still remember it today. There was this big, how like there's these big windows at the airport, and you can kind of see outside what's going on. And I remember I was looking on my right, and I saw like a lot of like firefighters, police officers, medical personnel, just people on the ground, like going through the rubble and doing all that kind of stuff. I came down of a plane with mostly Muslim people. A lot of them were just dressed in their traditional garb, their hijab, and all these other Islamic clothing, and people were just staring. I remember I was feeling very awkward, very uncomfortable. I was just like, man, this is crazy what's going on here. And it was at that moment that I realized, like, you know what? It really hit me that I was like, I'm living right now. I'm about to live with people who are complete strangers to me. And I'm a complete stranger to them too. So I'm not saying it like it's a one-way thing. It's a two-way thing. And I just didn't know. And I remember feeling anxious. I was like, man, I wonder what's going to happen next. How am I going to get along in this country? Because I didn't really speak a word of English. I just knew very, very basic English. Despite getting high grades in my English classes in Jordan, but I didn't really memorize a lot of stuff. I kind of understood it, but I didn't really know how to speak as much. And so it was only when I came here to the United States that I started to kind of get more into it, right? And learning more about the English language. And actually, once we went to New York, we had like a layover, right? So you know how sometimes you wait at an airport for a certain amount of time, so it's like a layover, and then you catch your next flight, and it was supposed to take us to LAX, and that's what happened, like so after we waited in New York for a few hours. I don't remember how long it was, but it was quite a long wait though, not too long though. Definitely around maybe like 8 or 10 hours. And so we went to LAX, and my uncle picked us up, and we went to Fontana, because he lives in Fontana with his family. And so and we found a place. We lived in Fontana for an apartment there, and we stayed there. And I enrolled in Fontana Middle School. And I was 8th grade at that time, because they didn't allow me to go to 7th grade, because they said you're too old to be in 7th grade, so we're just gonna skip you a grade and just put you right where you're supposed to be at. You're supposed to be in 8th grade. And I was grateful for that. Like, this was in August of 2001, and I graduated from middle school May of 2002. There wasn't really like a graduation. I mean, like they have them today. It was just kind of, all right, I'm done with middle school. Let me go to high school now. And I still remember it today, like the stuff that was happening in middle school. There was this one kid. He's like a blonde white kid. His name is Patrick, right? And I still remember him to this day. And I wonder how he's doing today. Like maybe he'll see my video on here. I don't know. Like I hope it speaks to him. But he was a jerk. He was a jerk, man. And he was not even trying to hide it. He was so proud of being a jerk that he made sure that every single day, because during 6th period, that's when we had PE, right? So and he would come from the other side of the school, because for me, I was in 2 classes, and they were like right next to each other. So, and then after that, 6th period, we would have PE, and so we had like the boys' locker room on this side and the girls' locker room on the other side. So it was Fontana Middle School. If you've ever been there, you know what I'm talking about. So the boys' locker room is kind of like near the softball caged area, and the girls' locker room is more by the basketball areas. Yeah, basketball arenas area or fields. So. And basically, I would go in, and my locker was in the same row as his, and not every day, but there was a certain period of time when he would do this more consistently. Like he would close my locker, when I would open it, because I had like my deodorant there, I had like my cologne and body wash and all that kind of stuff, so I had it there, so you had the opportunity to take a shower if you wanted to. A lot of times I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to take a shower at home, so I didn't want to like go there and take a shower with in front of a bunch of guys. I just felt like that was just weird. So you still had your clothes on, but a lot of the kids, I didn't really trust them. I'm one of those people who are like, it's very hard for me to trust other people, and especially when it's in that environment, right? I was even more apprehensive of them, especially given the fact that I wasn't really as good in my English as I am right now, but I was at that point I was able to, have conversations, and my accent was not as prominent as it was. Um, but every single day he would come in, close the locker right in my face, and call me the B word. And so, I'm not, what the B word is. Oh, I don't have to tell you. So, and there was one time where I got so sick of him, because he did the same thing, the same spiel. Come in, close my locker, go to his locker, and it's like, that's such a stupid move, because your locker is right next to mine, dude. So why are you provoking me when I'm literally right next to you? Like a few lockers down, granted, but I'm still there. I'm still near you. And so I just got so sick of it. I remember I put my stuff in my locker. I left it there, and I went all the way behind. He was like putting like his deodorant on, and I remember like grabbing the door of his locker and just boom slamming it. And I remember saying it was something along the lines of like, how do you like that, Patrick? And I called him the B word as well. And so, and I I noticed like everybody, all the boys in the locker room just, started saying like, ooh, you know how it is. Like, so sometimes kids, when they think that there's going to be a fight, they start to egg you on. It's like, yeah, go ahead, fight. So, they were not trying to break us up. They were trying to like get us to fight each other. Like, yeah, guys, go ahead, fight. And, and so he was like, oh, like, I don't want to fight a B word like you. And so, I was like, yeah, well, that's because you're a punk, and and I remember that day. It was just super funny. But, that was kind of like some of my experience. And a lot of the kids, the majority of the kids there were actually not white. Okay, so they were Hispanic. Next, it was black, and it was white as well. So I was literally the minority of the minority, and a lot of them, they would call me like terrorist, or, do you know Osama bin Laden, or are you guys related? And, there were times where, I would fight back with humor. So, because I was getting sick of like trying to always explain myself through facts, like, oh no, like I'm not Muslim. So there's a difference between Christians and Muslims and blah blah. I was like, what? They don't understand. And so, so sometimes like some of my classmates would say, oh, the same stuff over and over again. Like, oh, so do you know Osama bin Laden? Is he your uncle? And there were times where I'd say, yeah, he's my uncle, and we had lunch yesterday, so do you want to talk to him someday? You want to have lunch with us? And, some of the kids, because at that time it was like 9/11 and, terrorism. It's like, whoa, you're crazy, like, why would you even ask me that? They're like, no, I'm good. So, like, their eyes would just, like, pop open. And they're like, no, it's all right. I was joking with you. And so, so you kind of learn how to adapt, right? Like there's a difference in the way that we think, and we don't think the same, right? Like I grew up in the Middle East. I'm a Middle Eastern person. I'm more used to a Middle Eastern way of thinking. So that's where I spent my childhood at, in the Middle East. I didn't spend it here in America, even though I sound like an American right now, but that's just because I was disciplined. I wanted to be as American as possible. And admittedly, there were times where I was ashamed of being Middle Eastern, because I was, I wanted to be part of the crowd. And I'm one of those people where I don't like to be noticed, so I don't like to stick out of the crowd. I want to be able to kind of go along with everybody and not kind of like be invisible. But you don't want to be so invisible to the point where nobody even notices you at all. And so I wanted to distract them from paying so much attention to me, right? So I just worked on my accent. And I remember, my brother and I, we had this Egyptian lady that was our translator, right? And, she would come in every single day, and it was literally, it only took like a few months. I believe it was like 6 months before we stopped needing her. And she was like, wow, You know, like you guys really have caught on. Now you can understand um, you can understand what your teachers are saying. You guys are getting along really well. I'm glad that you guys are learning English more and more. So if you ever need me, you know, like just let your teacher know and I'll come back again and I'll help you guys. So, and she was very friendly, you know, and I appreciated her. My brother appreciated her as well. But after a while, I was like, you know, I already got this. So, and I appreciate your help. Thank you so much. So I didn't want to constantly feel like you know, somebody is helping me because I'm one of those people where it's like I don't really like to be helped for some reason. I just like to do things on my own because I consider myself more of like an independent person. So I don't really like to depend on others, but you know, obviously nobody can do everything by themselves, right? So we all need other people's help. We all need other people's assistance in certain things. And it's okay to ask for help when you need it. You know, so that's a message for you guys, you know, like if you ever need help, just seek it. You know, like stop trying to do everything on your own. Yeah, you want to build self-sufficiency as much as possible, but that's one thing I didn't realize as a kid. I realize it now as an adult, obviously, because you grow, you mature, you stop thinking the way that you used to think before. Is that no matter how much self-sufficiency you reach, you're never going to be 100% self-sufficient. You're just not. And it's okay to ask for help because humans are social creatures, you know, like we need each other. As much as we think we don't, like, you know, I got this on my own, you know, I don't need you, I'm strong and independent. Stuff like that is said by insecure people, you know, like it really is one of the most obvious and glaring manifestations of insecurity, you know, like, but we just the people who do that, they manifest their insecurity in a way that like in sort of like a positive way, like, you know, instead of saying like, oh, you know, I'm too weak to ask for help, we just say, oh, I don't need anybody, you know, I can do this on my own. And you know, once you grow, once you mature, you realize like how faulty such thinking is, you know, and it's actually quite dangerous, especially if you're a Christian and you think like that. It really is dangerous. So be careful of thinking those things, because it actually leads to pride, ultimately, right? And the Bible says that God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. So, you know, like we always got to be humble, guys. Submit to God, not submit to our own will or to our own ego. So, but anyways, you know, that was kind of, you know, middle school life in a sense where I just had this sort of like difficult childhood, I guess you can say. But I don't want to. Here's the thing: it wasn't all negative though, right? Like a lot of it was also positive, and a lot of the kids, you know, once they started warming up to me, you know, like once we started to kind of get along with each other and speak each other's language, not just like as in like English, but even psychological, subtle language, you know, like congruence of thinking, we started to get along with each other. And you know, they started to ask me questions like, oh dude, you know, like how do you say this in Arabic, you know, like how do you read this? And they would show me these phrases. So there was this one kid, his name is Roberto, and you know, like he was one of like my close friends at that time. And you know, he had this like phrase book, right? And he said, how do you read this? And he would show me a bunch of different sentences, and it was like a little phrase book. I don't know where he got it from, but I would read it to him and he would be so impressed. It's like, wow, that's so cool, man. You're able to read, you know, this language. And the same thing with the other people. And after that, for some reason, I just became like popular just because I knew how to speak several languages. And I was like, what the heck? Like, first you guys like hate me and, you know, call me a terrorist and, you know, Bin Laden and all that. And now you guys think like all of a sudden I feel like I'm a superstar. I'm like a rock star, you know, like you guys are just, you know, asking me how to say things in Arabic. But there are many times where they would ask me to say vulgar things in Arabic. And admittedly, you know, I was a Christian, but there were times where I compromised. I was like, well, you know, yeah, let me just say, yeah, that's how you say that in Arabic. And they started saying it to each other, and they started laughing, and that's when I realized, I was like, you know what? I don't think I should teach them that stuff, because I want you guys to learn the language, not just learn the cuss words, right? So, in other words, I don't want you to only focus on the vulgar language, but I want you to focus on the entire language, right? So, and sometimes they would try to teach me stuff in Spanish, like vulgar words, and I was like, well, now I know what that word means, but I'm not going to use it. I'm not really interested in, you know, um, using those words. So please don't, share these words with me anymore. So it was quite a battle, like being a Christian in a environment where I don't. They're not like a lot of them were Christian too. Actually, they were not, atheists or anything like that. I didn't know anybody in my school who was an atheist, which is strange if you compare it to today, where there's a lot of kids who are atheists. I'm like, how do you even decide that? Like, how do you come to the conclusion that there's no God at the age of 12 or 13? That doesn't make any sense to me, unless like an adult brainwashed you to think that way. But anyways, back to the point. So a lot of them were mostly Catholic, though. They were not like evangelical Christian. They were mostly Catholic. But a lot of them were not like observant. I can tell they weren't really observant, and there were actually a few who were heavily critical of the Catholic Church, and this was especially more so when I got into high school. I noticed like more kids would say critical things about Catholicism and Christianity, and they would say things like there's a lot of corruption in the Catholic Church, and but again, I feel like, this is just my perspective. We weren't really as politically aware and socially aware as today's generation is. We didn't really go by labels like liberal or conservative or this or that. We didn't even talk about those things, So maybe that's just my experience, because I've never really heard anybody talk about anything like that. And we talked a little bit about politics and social issues, but for the most part, people didn't really seem to care as much about that. They just didn't really have time for that, and life was kind of, it was a little bit like simple. We weren't so, maybe that's probably why, like, we weren't so inundated with like social media, like uh, the internet and things like that. So it wasn't constantly in your face everywhere that you go, and so that's the reason why a lot of people just didn't care. They felt indifferent or neutral in a sense, because they didn't know anything about that, and they didn't see how that was applicable to their lives. And so, anyways, the next video I'm going to talk about my high school experience and how I was in high school and in college as well. So keep an eye out for that, guys. I really want to give you guys as many details as possible without obviously going into too personal of details. But keep a lookout. I will share some details that I think they are going to shock you guys, but I feel like it's going to be good to encourage you. There are some things that I have done, that I have seen, that will shock you guys perhaps, and maybe you're gonna think, was that really you, Anush? Like, is that what happened? And like, there's times where we go through certain things, and sometimes I don't believe that I went through that, but guess what? I just focus on God and what God wants from me. So be on the lookout for that, guys. So I'm going to stop here, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Okay? Bye-bye.